Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen and today I am here with my first reading recap of 2026. So it's been a couple weeks since I've touched base to talk about what my current reads are. I mainly have been reading for the Aspen Words Prize. I've been trying to read all of the books that are longlisted for that prize. There are 15 of them. I have read 13 of them and I'm not talking about those books on my recaps because I plan on doing separate videos for them just to keep them all kind of lumped together, and then I can talk about what my favorites were and predict a short list, etc. So I have been reading a lot, I just haven't been reading a lot outside of that prize. So we'll go ahead and talk about 4 books today that I have finished, and then I have a lot of books that I'm actively reading, so we'll talk about those in a minute as well. The first book that I want to talk about is called We Pretty Pieces of Flesh by Colwill Brown, and this is a book that was on my radar from early on in 2025. I was anticipating that this book would get longlisted for the Booker, but unfortunately it didn't, and because of that, once they announced the long list, this book kept kind of falling to the bottom of my pile, and I was worried that I was going to give up on it if I didn't finish it in 2025, and I'm really glad that I did because this book was such a unique experience and it's one that I don't think I will be able to forget. Now, on the surface, this book could seem pretty simple. It's about female friendship. So we meet a group of girls. There are 3 of them. We meet them while they are in around middle school age and kind of grow with them. We are with them as their friendship is blossoming. We are there with them as their friendship is tested and there are stresses to it, and we follow them through into adulthood, where ultimately those strong friendship bonds that we have at such a young age don't always withstand the test of time as we go our separate ways and we start our adult lives. So that is a story that has been done a million times. So it doesn't really sound like anything that's going to be unique, but there's a couple things about this book that really make it stand out for me. The first is that this is written in a Yorkshire dialect. So it is kind of jarring, and I will admit that it took me a little bit to get into the pace and the rhythm of this book because obviously I'm American and I'm not familiar with that dialect or even that accent. So it was very difficult for me to get in the headspace and to find a rhythm with it. The best thing I can say is that if you are interested in this book at all, I would personally read along with the physical with the audiobook. The audiobook is brilliant and it is narrated by the author, so I didn't have to question how things were pronounced or where the stresses were or the accents were on certain words, and it really did start to become something that I was getting used to, and there was a flow to it, and I ended up really getting into the swing of things, and I found it to be very refreshing, and I really enjoyed every time when I would hit play on that audiobook to hear her accent, and it was just so interesting. And the Yorkshire dialect is very it's full of slang, and it does appear to be a little rough around the edges. It's very working class, and I don't mean that as an insult, but I live in Pittsburgh and we have a very distinct accent in this area, and we use different words and slang, and I found it to be very comforting because I live in an area where we have adopted a similar way of talking, and we have our own language, and I was just so fascinated to see how that unfolded in another part of the world. So I really did enjoy that part, and also there is a grittiness to it as well, and that gritty grittiness of the dialogue really ran parallel with the grittiness of the story of these young women. This is not a story or a coming of age story about girls that is sugar-coated or saccharine sweet. This is raw, this is real, and it was a really gutsy portrayal of all of the things that females go through, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I just found it to be really refreshing. I found it to be sharp. It was so smart, and yeah, I really enjoyed my time with this novel, and I'm so glad that I was able to squeeze it in before the end of the year. I certainly don't think this book is going to be for everybody, but if you think that you're going to enjoy something like this, and if you think that you can kind of get into a pace and a rhythm with the dialect that is being used, I think you should take a chance on this one. The next book I finished is a book called Jane and Dan at the End of the World by Colleen Oakley, and I started this year with a couple big classic projects, which I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes, and I decided because of that I wanted to sprinkle in something that was a little more low stakes and less serious, and this really fit the bill for that. This book follows a middle-aged couple named Jane and Dan, and Jane is going through a little bit of a rough patch. Her marriage isn't going the way that she wants it to, her career isn't really going that great, and she's at a point in her life where she's really feeling like she's stuck and unseen. She doesn't feel like the people in her life are noticing these changes that she's happening, and she really does feel all alone even though she's surrounded by a whole bunch of people. She's an author, and although she did have a little bit of success, a tiny bit of success with the first novel that she wrote, she is really struggling because her recent attempts to get a book going are not really landing with her publisher. So she's feeling really deflated and disappointed over that. She also thinks that her husband is cheating on her, and she decides that she is going to confront him during their anniversary dinner. They go to this very fancy restaurant that is way outside of their means, but her husband won a ticket to go, or a reservation, through a raffle he entered at work, and they're at this fancy restaurant, and all of a sudden the whole restaurant is hijacked and they are all taken hostage. And what is interesting, and what the plot of this book really is about, is the fact that all of the situation that is unfolding mirrors the plot from the book that she had released a few years ago. So that is kind of the catch of this book. I thought this was okay. It served its purpose for being a book that I didn't really have to invest too much of myself in. It was a book that I also found way more entertaining in the first half. As it continued, it did feel a little bit silly and a little bit outlandish and very unbelievable. I appreciated the humor, and at times characters were usually pretty likable. However, aside from the interesting premise, I'll probably not remember too much about this one, but it was still a fun read and it definitely served its purpose. So the next book that I finished was David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. So this was a book that I mentioned in a video I did a few months ago, talking about some big books that I have been meaning to get to for a long time. And I also finished not only David Copperfield, but I finished another book from that list. So I'm excited because now I think that's going to be a goal that I have, to get to a couple of those books from that video each year until I can complete them all. So at the end of the year, I was so happy to be able to fit 2 of those in. Now, David Copperfield is a book that I had been wanting to get to for a very long time, mainly because I enjoy Dickens. I know that he is not an author for everyone. He is very long-winded, and his stories do seem to stretch out over a very long period period of time, which can be really annoying for some readers, and they might find what he is doing quite boring. And although there were moments throughout this story that I was bored and I wanted him to move on to the next thing, there was enough of substance to the story to keep me going. The one thing I had to keep in mind is that this book covers an entire life. We meet David at infancy, and it goes through his entire life well into his adulthood, and we are meeting all of the people that become important in his life for one way or the other, whether it's a friend, whether it's a foe, whether it's somebody that he loves. And he does not have an easy life. There are lots of things and lots of hardships that he goes through, especially at a young age. Once he gets into adulthood, his life does seem to kind of settle and fall into place, but the people that he loves and the people that are surrounding him, they have their own trials and tribulations. So this is just not a story about him. We learn a lot about the other characters that are a part of his life too, and I did find a lot of that interesting. And I will say, I purposely chose to read this in the fall going into winter because I knew that I would have a little bit more time with the novel. I was going to be able to take those slow reading sessions to get through it, and I made sure I went into this not being in a rush. And I think anytime a reader picks up Dickens, that has to be your mentality going in, because the thing about Dickens is his novels were serialized. I think all of his were serialized for the most part, especially the larger ones. So we are not rushing to the end. We are taking our time. We are trying to build suspense. We are trying to get new readers. We're trying to give little cliffhangers throughout the duration of the book so that we want to pick up that next edition. And I think going into that, knowing what to expect, that really enhanced my reading experience. But yeah, I don't think that David Copperfield is my favorite Dickens. I still think that my heart belongs to Great Expectations, but I think the next Dickens that I will likely pick up eventually, not anytime soon, will be Bleak House, because so many people have told me that that's actually his best, but we'll see when I get to that one. But yeah, I am so glad that of that list of 10 big books that I came up with, that I was actually able to put a little bit of a dent in it this past year. So that is good. And moving on to the final book that I finished in 2025, and it was another big book from that list, and that is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. For those of you that watched my video about my favorite reads of 2025, you'll know that this one took the #1 spot for me. And not only was it a favorite for 2025, but this has slid into my top 5 of all time. This book is phenomenal. If you have ever entertained the idea of picking up this book, please do yourself a favor and at least give it a shot. I think that there are so many reasons why people are intimidated by this book, whether it's the size of it, the worry or the fear that they're not going to get along with a Western, or just that they don't want to pick up a book that everybody is hyping up. I know I went through all of those feelings in wondering whether or not I should pick up this book, and I'm so glad that I at least sat down and gave it a chance, because this book it's incredible. And I think that this is storytelling at its finest, and I think that anybody that would dedicate a little bit of time to this book just to see if it was going to be something that they would want to continue with is going to not only want to continue it, but they're going to fly through it and they're going to be rewarded at the end. This book at its basic core, if you live under a rock, is that there is a group of men that do a cattle ranch from southern Texas all the way up to Montana. And that sounds very simple, and it's not as simple as that sounds. There are men that come from different parts of the country that they meet along the way, and there are battles, and there are tragedies, and there are things to be excited over, and just life is just happening along this cattle drive, and we learn about this immense group of characters. There are so many of them, and McMurtry, even though there are lots of side characters, he doesn't just throw them in there. He builds them, and we know these people, and he took his time with each and every one of them, and they all serve a purpose. And I think that the way that he wrote this story, nothing is wasted. So often I will read a huge book and think, this could have been cut out. We didn't need this part. There is actually nothing from this book that I would omit. It was perfect. And as a matter of fact, I started to read this book, and there was a little bit of a lull at the beginning. And I say lull, and it's a lull in comparison to how the rest of the book flew by. It was not boring by any means, but at the very beginning of the book, he is taking his time to introduce us to the characters, to lay that foundation. And I think that if you can get through that and you get to the point where the cattle drive starts, you're just going to start to fly through the book. And I found myself realizing, hey, you're getting close to the end, and do you really want to be done with this book? Do you want to have to say goodbye to these characters? Do you want to have to put this book down because it's over? And I purposely started to slow my pace because I was enjoying it so much. And I don't say this very often, but I could have easily read 500 more pages of that book. It was that good. I will say there are additional books that Larry McMurtry continued in the series, but from what I understand, the second one in the series is more of a prequel, and I don't know if I have any interest in going back to read that, but if any of you out there have continued with the Lonesome Dove series, if you think that it's worth going further into it, I just loved everything that happened in Lonesome Dove so much. I almost don't want to continue and read anything else because I don't want it to mar anything about the experience that I had with the first book. So yeah, this book, it was just so wonderful. Like I said, it's very character driven, but it's heavy on character, but it's also heavy on plot. There is so much going on. It is that perfect balance. It never got boring. This book will make you laugh. This book will rip your heart out multiple times. And yeah, it was just such a beautiful story, and it touches on every aspect of what it is to be a human. Every emotion goes through this. This is also a book that can be very delicate at times, but it can be very brutal and savage. And I'm gushing over this book, but it is just so good. And I think too, now that I have finished it, I am going to treat myself to the mini series. I'll have to find out how I can get my hands on that. I'm not sure how readily available it is. I think the miniseries came out in the late 80s, and if I'm not mistaken, maybe it was over four or 5 nights, so it is in little increments. But I remember watching that mini series as it came out and being emotionally invested and having my heart broken watching that mini series. And obviously everybody always says that the book is better, and of course it was in this sense, but I still do want to revisit that because I do have really good memories of watching that with my dad. And yeah, and even though I had an inherent emotional connection to this book prior to reading it. I don't think that you need that going into this in order to enjoy it. I think that this is just one of those books that is universally loved, and there is honestly something in it for everyone. And yeah, when I posted the book about, or when I posted the video about wanting to read this, so many people commented about how much they loved this book. Not a single person said that it wasn't worth their time. And then when I came out with my list of my favorites from 2025, so many people commented that it was a favorite of theirs as well. So let this be your sign, give it a chance, and yeah, I'm so glad that I read it. And also, I did mention that this is 2 books off of that list that I made, so I have 8 big books left from that list to finish, and we'll see if I can get into any of them in 2026. So those are the books that I have finished. Now let's move on to the books that I'm currently reading. So the first one is going to be my project read for 2026, and that is going to be War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. Now this was actually supposed to be my project read for 2025. However, there was a little bit of a snag in me starting that one. As I mentioned, I like to pair a physical book with the audio whenever I'm reading a big dense classic or a big dense book. And I also was very mindful about what translation I wanted to read for War and Peace. There are multiple translations out there, and if you read translated literature, you will know that reading a good translation can mean a world of difference in your enjoyment level of the book. So I did some research, and I decided that what I wanted to read was the Briggs translation. However, I was not able to get an audio version of the Briggs translation in the States. It exists, but for some strange reason, it is not available for purchase or available at all for me in the States. So that really put a damper on things for me, and I decided to just abandon it, thinking that, okay, maybe I can pick it up in 2026 to see, or give it some time for the Briggs translation to be available. Spoiler alert, it's still not available in the States. So then I thought, that's it. I'm not even going to bother with trying again in 2026. I'll do something else. But right before the end of the year, I watched a video by a fellow booktuber named Paulina Maria. She has a great channel. I highly recommend you following her if you don't already. But she did a video about her experience of reading War and Peace last year. And she did it with the Maude translation. And she inspired me to give this one a go. So I was able to get my hands on both the physical copy as well as the audio, and it is officially going to be my project read for 2026. Now, the plan is that I will read a chapter a day or a couple chapters a day and let this stretch out through the entire year. But there is a problem with that, and that is, this book is so good and I can't stop reading it. I did not think that I would be as invested in it as I am, but I'm flying through this book. I don't want to stop. I'm gonna dedicate some time today to sit down and read a chunk of it because it is so compelling. There are so many different characters. There is so much drama. There's already deceit and conniving going on, and we're having a little bit of some love stories established, and I can tell that this is just going to be so good. Anna Karenina from Leo Tolstoy is one of my favorite books of all time, and this is very much giving me those vibes. I love his writing style. Not the vibes in the sense that it's following along the same type of story. It is very different and it feels very different, but I'm so happy to be in an epic novel again with all of these different Russian characters and filtering through the different names. And I forgot how challenging of a read Anna Karenina was, with all of the different characters having similar names, and not only do they have similar names, but one person is called like 5 different names, and I'm just enjoying my time with it so much, and I fear that I'm not going to last the whole year with this book. So who knows, I might even be able to fit in a second project read for 2026 if I can get through this one, which I don't see that being a problem. So the next book is also something that I consider a bit of a project. It's a book I'm going to be taking my time with and reading slowly, although once again, I'm really enjoying my time with this one as well, so it might be a quicker read than I anticipated, and that is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Steinbeck is one of my favorite authors. I have enjoyed every single book of his that I have ever read. Many think that this is actually his best book. East of Eden is my favorite book of all time, so this definitely has a lot to live up to in order to move that out of my top spot, but I can definitely see Steinbeck's writing coming through. It's reminding me why I love him as a writer. I'm only 60 pages in, but it feels like the story is really now starting to pick up, and I think I'm going to start to get a stride with it and probably start to tear through it a little quicker. But yeah, it's too early to tell how it's comparing to East of Eden. I will say that I don't feel like I'm as invested or connected to the characters so much in this one, but I think we've really only met one of the main characters so far, and that is Tom Joad. But I think that once we start to meet some of the other characters, it's probably going to get to where I really start to connect with them. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far, and we'll see. I'm hoping to maybe take my time with it, maybe read this over the next 2 or 3 months. Yeah, so that'll be one that you hear updates on periodically. Another book that I am actively reading, we're now in a new year, so we have a whole bunch of new reading challenges that are going on, and I always follow the reading challenge from Ben at Ben Reads Good. The first challenge, or the first prompt for January, is to, I forget exactly what the title of the prompt is, but it's basically to read a book that has a name of a food in the title, and I am reading Gingerbread by Helen Oyeyemi, and I am only 1 chapter in. I am enjoying it so far. This is the first book from this author that I have read. It feels like it's going to be a little weird and a little quirky, but I haven't read enough of it to get my true feelings on it. I am enjoying it so far, but I'm just not really sure what to expect with her writings yet, so it's too soon to tell, but that is what I will be reading for the January prompt. I have also read a book for the Simon and Louise Savage. They also have prompts this year for their reading challenge, and I have already read a book for January for them, and I'm trying to remember what the prompt was, but one of the books I was reading for the Aspen Words prize fit that prompt. So those are kind of the 2 reading challenges that I have going on in the background this year that I'll be trying to read a book for each month. And then the last book that I'm reading is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. This is a strange book to me in the sense that I had never heard of this book. This book was not on my radar at all, and then all of a sudden in November, I started to see it in end of year lists, and I was reading articles about it, and everybody was talking about it, and then I started to hear it in the wild, and people were asking me if I had read it, and I'm like, read it? I haven't even heard about it. Like, what is this book? And then I read the premise. It sounded very interesting and like something that would be up my alley, and I went to put a hold on it at my library. and I was 789th in line for it. So that just proved I was definitely living under a rock, or this book just came out of nowhere. So I thought, yep, it's going to be a while before I can get to that. And I was at my library yesterday, and we have a shelf called the Lucky Day Shelf. And basically it's just a 21-day loan. There are no renewals that you can do. And I just so happened to see it there, and I took it out and I started it, and I'm already up to page 164. It's just under 300 pages, so I shouldn't have too much longer to read for this. It's under 300 pages, but it's also epistolary, so there are large chunks of blank space on a lot of pages, so it's reading very quickly. I am enjoying my time with it. It is a very quaint story. It's very charming. It's giving me major Elizabeth Strout vibes, specifically because the main character kind of reminds me of a less prickly Olive Kitteridge, and I love Olive Kitteridge as a character. So yeah, I'm getting along with that. So for my next recap, I should definitely have this done by then. So those are the things that I'm actively reading. And then lastly, I will be picking up probably another current read this afternoon. I am actively working my way through the Aspen Words long list. There are 2 more left that I have to finish, so I will likely pick up one of those 2 books this afternoon. Not sure which one that'll be, but I'm getting close to being done with that long list, and then I will start to compile my videos related to that prize very soon. So yeah, those are all my current reads. That's a little bit of a glimpse into what my project reads will be like and kind of what to expect. But yeah, I am so excited about having a fresh slate for this year, a new year, new challenges, specifically because 2025 was not my favorite reading year. And although I did have a lot of really quality reads come out of it, I'm really hoping that 2026 I get back to that type of reading year where I am spoiled with the amounts of great books that I have read. So at the end of this year, it takes me a little more time to put my best of list together because I've just read so many high quality books. But that is my wish for 2026. I also have a whole stack of books that I am planning on sprinkling in for my Uncovering Indies project. So I have a whole list of independent press titles that I am reading through or planning on reading through very soon, so I can get more of those videos out. And yeah, I'm hoping that this is just a great reading year for not only myself, but each and every one of you. Thank you so much for watching, and until we read again, bye!